Hi everybody, my name's Gordon Neal. I'm the current caretaker at Seton Castle. This beautiful building here. Right next door, through this gate, is Seton Collegiate Church. The church is owned and run by Historic Environment Scotland, and it's open to the public usually from April, usually would be the Easter weekend, through to October, November, depending on the weather. These little guys are coming out for a little feed. You can see the ruins here to the side. We'll talk about them in a moment. If you do come here in the summer, it's a beautiful place to visit. I've been coming here for years with my children, and now my grandchildren. When you come here, you'll be greeted by either Ian or Aidan, who are the guides, and they'll look after the place. They're welcoming and knowledgeable about the church. First documentation of the church was in 1242, when the Bishop of St Andrews granted them permission to make a parish church here. I'm sure there would have been a church here before, prior to this, but this is the first documentation. This was a church for the Seton family, a very respectable, noble family, said to have come from Norman descendants. They grew into a wealthy, powerful family in Scotland and had land all over East Lothian, all over the north of Scotland, in fact throughout Scotland, land in England, France, Norway, and locally they had the salt works and the coal mines. The first church would have been a rectangular building, and in 1434 Kathleen Seton built a tomb to the south side of it, and this was a tomb for her husband, Lord George Seton. In 1470 Lord George Seton II founded a collegiate church. He never had the Pope's permission to do so at the time, but he did start work on the choir and proceeded to do the collegiate church. The third Lord George in 1492 was granted permission by the Pope Alexander VI or VII to make it a collegiate church. So he built the priest house and their dwellings and everything they needed in the corner, the south corner of the church. It says there was a provost, 6 priests and 2 choir boys who all shared these dwellings, and they were to pray for the family. Throughout the history of the church, the English would come up to Scotland, destroy everything that we've built, or steal it, or if they didn't want it, they would just burn it. In Seton Church, this happened on 3 or 4 occasions. Through the Wars of Independence to the Rough Wooing. In 1544 Hereford came up, laid siege to Edinburgh, burnt Seton Palace, come through here. And at the time, the English churches must have been poor, because the English came up here and they stole our bell and the organ, as well as damaging much of the stonework, and they setting fire to the wooden structures. This part of the church is thought that it could be part of the original church, and this would have had a wooden roof, and in 1544 it would have been burnt to the ground. And after Hereford done this, Janet Hepburn, who previously had built the North Transit for her husband George Seton, who was killed at the Battle of Flodden, along with Sir James Seton and John Seton, along with other nobles. The Hereford damage, she repaired that, she built this tower, and she took down the tower, the chapel that was built by Catherine Sinclair, and erected this transept to match the north one. And while we were doing our talks at university and the history societies, one of the questions we always got asked at every talk is, why is the church roof not finished? Janet Hepburn was the last Seton to modify or to do any work on Seton Church, and she died in 1558, an uncompleted roof. George Seton had got a bell made, and that is still inside the church just now. The bell was made in Holland. And I'll be doing a follow-up video here on this. It'll go into more detail about the structures and more about the history. And that'll be linked, or I'll put that up on Seton Archaeological Society's Facebook page. There's quite a lot of damage that's been done through the years, and all the way through the wars, the Battle of Independence, Cromwell attacked it, Hereford. I think the harshest sounding one is the last one, during the Jacobite Rebellion. Lord Seton said in his trial that he was in his house, his palace next door, when the Lothian militia came, ransacked his house, and also came to the church and burst through the door, opened up the tombs, and started stabbing the ancestral bodies and skeletons. And he says this was what made him make the decision to join the Jacobite Rebellion, was this barbaric act that these men had shown him and his family and his ancestors. These stone carvings, they were found in the church, built into the church, and they were taken from the old palace. Some of the windows, armorals, and these are from windows. Beautiful stone carving. The craftsmanship, even hundreds of years later, looks fantastic. The palace which they came from, Seton Palace, is said to have been the nicest mansion in the whole of Scotland in the 16th, 17th century. All the figures that would have been once stood here, maybe Alexander Seton, George Seton, Janet Hepburn. The Seton crest is still here, visible. Another Seton crest. Royals also visited Seton on many occasions. Charles I, Charles II, James I, the Sixth, James VII, and probably more that haven't been documented. My favourite one, and country's favourite one probably, Mary Queen of Scots. Throughout Mary's life, the Setons were heavily involved. Mary Seton was one of the four Marys who went to France as a child and grew up there with Mary Queen of Scots. Important times in Mary Queen of Scots' life, when she returned to Scotland, and I always have a view sometimes Mary's misthought about, and what we'll have to remember is her age. Now, I have 3 daughters, And I couldn't imagine any of them at the age of 18 being able to rule a country without listening to our nobles. We know that from the history books that Mary was here on several occasions, especially when Rizzo got murdered, her Italian butler. That Mary fled to Seton before going on to Dunbar. And Darnley, her second husband, when he got murdered at the Kirky Field in Edinburgh, again she fled to Seton. And this time, much to the annoyance of the nobles, she was playing golf, archery, croquet, when she should have been time of morning. I'm sure on these occasions she's been in there praying for either herself, or for Rizzio, or for Darnley. On her third marriage to Bothwell, she signed her marriage certificates at Seton. And the chances are they would have came here and asked for God's blessing on this marriage. Before the Battle of Carbery, she lived at Seton and her army were camped in the grounds in the surrounding area. I'm sure she prayed before the battle. The bloom is just starting to come out in the trees. Back to these ruins. These ruins are the priest's house and the dwelling houses for the choir boys and the provost. Lord George Seton started them off, and Lady Janet Hepburn, she added bits to it. Quite an impressive buildings, a lot going on in the walls. And we come over this little bridge. This is the holding tank for the water that would come down the stream, so they could fill it up. And after it was the priest's house, after the Reformation, it was a brew house and a mill. So this was the sluice gate to let the water through, to turn the big wheel that was to be down here. Charlie Bathgate, whose family have rented the market gardens behind this wall here, and they're the oldest tenants of the Early Weems estates in East Lothian, and it goes all the way back to 1826. There's an interesting story. After the Setons had forfeited all their land, Seton Palace was used, and it was used for storing the local market gardeners' vegetables and fruits. We know about the orchards at Seton. I believe that his family could have been all the way back to when the Setons were here. But anyway, Charlie as a young boy can remember coming through this window, and before they'd done the archaeological dig in 1956, it was like that. It was just big mounds of grass all the way up to the windows. And when he started doing the dig, Charlie climbed through the window just as he always done as a boy, out playing. And he climbed through this window down here, and they had started the excavations, and he had a wee rummage through, and he found a human skull. As a young boy, very excited, he took this to his teacher next again day at Longniddry Primary School. And that was the last time he ever seen that skull, and I presume that she would have handed it to the proper authorities. Oh well. Being next door to the church has its advantages, also has disadvantages. My granddaughters, one who's 12, one who's 6, always insist on putting pennies down the well and making a wish. Sometimes these pennies in my pocket are only pounds. It's always been one of my preferred places to come. When the trees come into full blossom, the place is beautiful. The noise, the sound of the birds. An interesting thing, while we're doing the archaeological dig in the castle, I was always querying if this was the actual bridge, because when the etchings were done, these buildings would have been stood. As you can see, this is where the mill wheel would have stood. But further investigating under this bridge, although there's a little bit of water in it now, this one, you can see the construction. But the one further over is a different type of construction. And they're going two different ways. So either one half of the bridge is collapsed and it's been rebuilt, or indeed it was two bridges. One was too small, the original one, then it was extended. And that was a pleasant surprise when I looked under here. This is part of the brew house. We'll also put on Seton Archaeological Society's Facebook page some panoramic views of the church and of the ruins. Thank you for watching.